Yeah, so we got Walsh and Seifert, who are tied at 10 wins. Obviously, multiple Super Bowl winners. You know, Walsh won 3. Seifert sneaky. I feel like our generation probably give Walsh that 4th, and Seifert just gets the 1 when we were like 10 years old, 94. He actually got the 2nd because remember Walsh bounced 89 or 88, and Seifert got the 2nd one of the back-to-backs. Well, Jim Harbaugh, who was right behind them, those guys had 10 wins. With 5, obviously one of the great little stretches in NFL history, 5 playoff wins, 3 years. Taking Kyle a little bit longer, but he's been to the playoffs 3 times. So the same amount of playoff appearances, right? 3 seasons. Now has 5 victories. And I think passes him officially in win percentage. And who knows? I mean, Kyle would have to, if Kyle were to win or lose next week, they would have the same record, 5-3. If Kyle were to win next week, he would then be 2nd all time behind George and Walsh. I guess it would go Walsh, technically. You wouldn't put George ahead of him. Walsh, George, and then
you
Kyle
might
Shanahan.
Put George ahead because his percentage is better. He was 10-5, and Walsh was. Oh no, never mind. Yeah, I don't know. Walsh was 10-4. So
George Seifert was damn good. I don't think he quite gets the credit. No one ever mentions him for a guy that won multiple Super Bowls. I have not heard one guy go, who doesn't get the credit he deserves? George Seifert. Never heard in a football argument, even with older people. Never comes up, guy. People be like, you don't understand. Joe Gibbs, that guy could coach. Like, what about George Seifert? Remember beating him? No. Who? Today was a pretty big day. 5 playoff victories. And you could argue just the last 2 years. In 12 months, 3 playoff victories. Depending on the opponent, what is he next week? A 5-point favorite minimum? If you had to rank them.
Vikings? Okay.
Would Vikings be the lowest or the Cowboys?
Smallest number, I think, would be. Well, it probably would be Dallas, just because there's a lot of Cowboys. If you can't give the Cowboys too many points just based on the volume of bets you'd probably get on Dallas.
Assuming let's say the Vikings squeak it out, they don't win by a lot. Is that a 6-point line? Or is that too big?
Yeah, I mean the Niners just won 41-23, so 6, 5.5, 6 probably isn't crazy.
11 straight victories,
5.5. Yeah, 11 straight wins. Hottest team in the league. Brock looks good. Everybody saw it.
If the Giants were to win and the Cowboys were to win convincingly, I could see that number being like 4.5. They did play last year.
Kyle's had not only has Kyle
closest
had 5 season wins, but
game that wasn't that close I've ever seen was last year.
Which one?
The one where Dak takes off, slides. They didn't have timeouts. Remember that?
Oh yeah, do I remember that? Are you kidding me? It confirmed everything I continue to believe about a Mike McCarthy coach team. You know what's wild too is Kyle just won his 5th playoff game. He did it with the guy he started at the beginning of the season was his 3rd string quarterback, and it's like not even close to his craziest playoff game.
Trevor Lawrence is throwing pick after pick after pick after pick.
Like it was just like, to me, part of what's crazy about winning with your 3rd string. If I said you're winning playoff game, you won a playoff game with your 3rd string quarterback, you'd say, well, you probably had to put that thing together with duct tape, or your defense was probably really dominant. Defense made some plays, no question, but
it's weird, right? Because when you use the word 3rd string quarterback, it diminishes the player who's clearly pretty good. Like he's their starting quarterback now, who's a pretty good player.
I don't know, man. Clearly he's better than most 3rd stringers, right? But he was he was in a battle for the 3rd string job in camp. That's what happened.
Yes. I'd say he won it by about mid-camp, though.
Yeah, he won it, but again, like he was the 3rd string quarterback. He just was. Now you're arguing what? That Iowa State's great, like a
no.
In the Big 12.
You're right. I mean, in the history of the league, when a guy starts your season as the 3rd string quarterback and you win a playoff game later that year and then are favored in the 2nd playoff game, that's a pretty incredible accomplishment.
Yeah, Trevor Lawrence wishes he could have Brock Purdy's game.
For sure.
Purdy.
But ultimately, this guy took a lot of shit, and rightfully so, from the sense of his record, because the first 2 years were really pretty terrible. And honestly, if it wasn't for that 5-game win streak at the end of, what was it, Jimmy's, for the year he got traded, that number could have been a lot lower. He was way under 500. Now he's well above 500, and he's just rattling off playoff games. So you start rattling off playoff victories. The number one story Monday Night Football is going to be like, Mike McCarthy's going to lose in the wild card round back-to-back seasons. Like just winning a playoff. Andy Reid became a legend before he ever won a Super Bowl just because he was winning playoff games all the time with the Eagles. Like this guy goes to the NFC Championship all the time. Jim Harbaugh is still talked about a decade later. Dude didn't win the Super Bowl. He went 5-3 in the playoffs. But it was like, God damn, all those playoff victories. All you players, everyone wants to win the Super Bowl. Of course. Most people win like one in their career, and it's incredible. If you're an all-timer, you win two. Or you're George Seifert, and you're in that class, but no one considers you to be.
Oh, like Tomlin, you win one, but then you never get under 500 either.
Exactly. So I think that it's gone incredibly well for the 49ers organization, for Jed, and most importantly, Kyle establishing himself as like, I'm the fucking real deal, fellas. I was going to look up Mr. who refused to quit and is returning, but I would guess Sean has 6 playoff victories. Now, one of those, and he got 7. Sean McVay, Super Bowl champion, 7-3. So in 10 games, he's 7-3, 700. That's fantastic, right? It's why, like, the hype on Sean, to me, is not overhyped. Like, Sean McVay is a real deal. If Sean McVay became a free agent tomorrow, like, legitimately, like, you didn't have to trade the Rams or whatever, he was just on the open market, there would be a handful of teams who wouldn't hesitate firing their coach.
Well, who would get more in compensation? The Rams or the Saints for Sean Payton?
Sean McVay.
Yeah.
And the Rams.
I think one thing that's similar about them, too, when you see a guy coach without a superstar quarterback, this is where I know Bill's gotten a lot of shit for everything that's happened post-Tom. I do think going to the playoffs last year, being on the verge, now he's the one that picked the OC this year. I'm not saying this has been overly impressive, but he's been pretty competitive with Mac Jones. I think more competitive than a lot of teams would be. Now we'll see. Mac is demanding a trade to the Raiders or something like that. Per story.
He is?
I don't know. I don't have the exact verbiage, but there was some story on Friday that was like Mac. I don't know if it was Mac said he's not coming back, but basically Mac wants to go to the Raiders to play for Josh Daniels. You know what my thought was? Between Derek Carr and Mac Jones, the Raiders have more quarterbacks that want to be their quarterback for no apparent reason than they deserve. Like, nobody wants to be the Texans quarterback. Nobody's ever proclaimed, I want to be the Texans quarterback. The Raiders are going to have back-to-back quarterbacks that would choose to be there over everywhere else in the league. It's wild. When Mac.
Let's just hypothetically say somehow that happens. The chances that Mac Jones is a better Raider than Derek Carr, and we can nitpick Derek Carr all we want. Like, is going to be slim to none. I would say he's under.
Yeah,
like,
I'd say we're not going to bet on his coach again.
No.
Josh.
I just think Kyle is now, I mean, he already had, but he's having a pretty good little run here and doesn't feel like it's slowing down. Because when you talk big picture, he's got all these guys coming back. I know someone tagged us in something like, they better take care of it this year because they got some free agents. Yeah, like if your free agents are like Jimmy Ward and Ebukam and Mike McGlinchey, like, I mean, all the guys that they have under contract, they would keep under contract and choose those guys, right? Jimmy Garoppolo.
How about Tayshaun? How about Gibson, by the way, who they signed because Jimmy gets hurt in camp?
Now that's a free agent I would like back.
That tackle he made on the Geno run play early in the game where 10 guys were going right, except for him, who was like coming across and read Geno. It was the first series of the game, third down. Kyle, that's the other thing with Shanahan.
How often do you see the tackle? Now, granted, a lot of guys that use a stiff arm are good running backs. You tackle the stiff arm and just yank it down.
Kind of.
And Geno got yanked.
That's the other thing with Kyle, right? Is he's not just a guy who cares about his offense. Now, I don't think someone tweeted like Kyle shouldn't have gone with the squib kick, and my thought was like, I don't think Kyle called the squib kick. I don't think Kyle is involved in that decision. Maybe.
I would wonder if the special teams coach goes, Kyle, I'm going to squib kick. And Kyle's like, cool, do it.
Well, yes.
Kyle, I like the squib kick here. This is the situation. He's like, okay, go with it.
Yeah. But Kyle is not overriding.
I don't believe it's like, remember what we talked about in that special teams meeting on Thursday night, Kyle? What do you think about the squib kick? Like, no, it's like,
well, it's I'm kicking it deep here, Kyle. And Kyle's like, no, Squib. That's not what happened.
Yeah, do what we worked on Wednesday afternoon in special teams practice.
I think one of his signatures is that he really cares about defense. That's one of his signatures. That is part of this.
If you're not going to give a shit about special teams, you have to love defense if you're an offensive coach, right? So I'm cool with that.
Yeah.
I think the knock on a lot of the college guys that are quote unquote offensive guys, Chip, historically, Mike Leach, RIP, Lincoln. Like, do they even care about defense? Like that is a legit knock on a lot of those guys. Like their coaches say it, their fans say it when they watch. Like, do we practice?
Right.
I think Sean falls under this. Clearly, Sean McVay values defense. Right. I like offensive coaches. I don't think Andy spends much time at practice with the defense, but he's like, yeah, Veach, go sign sweet dudes on defense. He wants to allocate resources over there. I can take more. I can take less, turn them into more over here. Go sign a D lineman and a safety.
You know what I think it comes down to? And you've worked in college and the NFL. Would you say that practice time is very precious to these guys? Definitely in college where I guess there's rules on both, right? How much you can practice.
It's just, you can't practice for 5 hours. Like, the guys don't have the energy. So you do just have a finite 2 hours or 145 or 220. So, and I would say an hour of them are immediately allocated to like some individual stuff, right? Just the fundamentals of your craft that you don't really get to do football stuff.
So you have to make decisions when you practice. And you have to decide, like, what am I going to prioritize? Because I can't do everything. And my guess is most offensive coaches don't make sure that they spend time in practice establishing what kind of physical team they're going to be. And we've been to a million. Kyle Shanahan went to the Jim Harbaugh ones. There's only there are rules about what you're allowed to do. Pete Carroll, right? Famous, he gets in trouble for it. Niners have gotten in trouble for it. Physicality in practice.
John
Harbaugh. To me, like that says a lot about who a coach is. Like an offensive coach. Does your practice get physical? Because I don't blame. I think it's easy if you're a coach. I don't have time for this. We just got to run this offense. Defensive guys do what they want, and I think it is reflected in the way your team plays. If you don't really take defense seriously in practice, there's no question that they.
Do you think seriously. I almost said Trevor Lawrence. Do you think Cliff Kingsbury, his teams were ever in danger of getting fined in an early June practice for hitting too much at the line of scrimmage?
Maybe if like Buddha did something out of character, but outside of that, no.
So it's like you just rattled off guys that are pretty, especially John and Pete, like people that know them, they're like, these guys are fucking nuts. Part of being a good defensive coach, like you got to be kind of crazy. It does feel like Kyle's a little nuts, despite being an offensive guy. Like nuts.
He looks like he's going to come out of his skin sometimes.
Yeah. He was pissed off a couple times a day. It looked like.
How do you not call that bullshit? Was the line on the Abram play
when he yanked?
Yeah, I saw a lot of people tweeting about a face mask that got missed, but the Niners hit a big play on the next one. I didn't see it.
I get why Debo was mad. I didn't think like he did like a grab and roll.
Yeah, I think
he was an alligator.
No, I thought. Did you think McCaffrey scored on the play before Purdy snuck it in?
I thought the overhead view, it looked like he crossed the plane.
Yeah,
I don't mind a mindset of like, well, I'm not going to challenge, and if you guys ain't going to challenge, let's keep rocking and rolling.
Yeah,
we're
second down. Let's just hurry up and put this thing in.
It could have been one of like, is the upper deck going to challenge and no one challenges? All of a sudden, they're wasting a timeout like that. That would have been a Jim Harbaugh team. You're just kind of waiting, like, are they going to challenge? Is the referees going to challenge? And then it's 0, and the quarterback's looking over there, and then they're going like this.
Yeah, you'd rather be indignant about the fact that they didn't challenge and just do the right thing and score.
Yeah, I mean, don't they review scoring plays? But if they don't call it a scoring play, they don't have to review it, huh?
Right.
So you would have to throw the flag on that.
Yeah.
So honestly, you get screwed. Like if they would have called a touchdown, they would have immediately reviewed and they might have moved it back to the 1, but you wouldn't have to waste your challenge. It probably was at the time. You're like, God damn, this is going to be a tight game. Do you want to risk challenges on timeouts? I mean,
they felt like, because it was only
they were at the 0-yard line.
Yeah, it was a first down run. He had picked up like 1.5 yards, so they'd gotten a push. They just hadn't gotten enough. And then they got the push they needed.
We went from the Bush push being like one of the most controversial plays in football. Like, you should not be allowed to do this, to that just being an overwhelming, everyone shoves everybody now.
Unfair to the defensive lineman?
Honestly, kind of like it.
How about Kinlaw making a play early in the game?
Destroyed him. Forgot he existed.
I was like, okay.
Kinlaw's got a good gig. You know, he gets first round money, top 15 money. He doesn't have to practice. He just gets to play. 17 snaps. That's a guess. I don't know how many snaps. That feels high, actually.
It did feel high.
If I had to guess Kinlaw snap count, it'd probably be closer to like 12. Because when they go passing downs, they don't mind going a lot of the thinner guys inside. Like they'll go their amoeba packages where it's like Ebicam, Willis, Armstead, Bosa. Like they got a lot of long linear guys.
Did it feel like they lined up Bosa on the left side next to Armstead a lot more today?
I'd be lying if I said I was super locked into where Bosa, like the formations of the group.
I read there was an article in The Athletic today that about McCaffrey that he got his speed from his mom. Lisa is basically the point. Her dad was like a silver medalist Olympian, and she was on the Stanford soccer team with Julie Foudy. But I guess she ran one time a 40. She ran a 4.8, and Ed ran a 4.69.
So she can fly.
She can fly, and she got sick after she ran. It turned out she was pregnant when she ran that 4.8 40.
So you're telling me that Ed McCaffrey, who I'm guessing is a 10-plus year NFL vet, it could be well over, and a Stanford soccer player who ran a 4.8 40 while she was pregnant, produced a bunch of D1 athletes and potentially one of the best white running backs we've ever seen? Shocking.
Definitely an all-pro level, stud.
He does feel a lot body type like Bosa. It's like, can this guy be any more jacked? Doesn't he just feel more jacked than he's ever been? He was not that jacked in college.
No, I mean, there's no way that he was, but he was just a ball of muscle in college.
Yeah. He looks, I would say, I feel like 10 pounds thicker from even some of his like early Carolina days. These last couple years, I wonder if just more time rehabbing in the weight room. His arms look pretty big, bro. I don't want to say like Khalil Mack arms, but they're big-ass arms.
It's like a mini Iguodala. I mean, Iguodala's thinner, obviously, but just like the definition.
Did you notice, maybe only bald guys do, Bosa took off his helmet? I'm like, is he receding a little?
I didn't see that.
He keeps his hair pretty short. Maybe he knows. If he does, smart man.
Honestly, the one I'd like to sit down with pre-gel is McVay, because Sean goes like way forward on the sides. It just makes me wonder, is there something going on here? Or is that just, there is a style where guys just do that.
You think he can put out some power alleys?
I don't know. Yeah. I don't know if he's 380 down the alleys or 425.
It is pretty nuts that there has never been a documented picture since he's become pretty famous of non-gel Sean McVay. Like, what does he just look like without things in his hair? Like you right now, you see, how does it not exist?
Hard Knocks, did he put his head underwater when he was shirtless in the pool? Probably not.
I don't think he did. I think he was above. Yeah.
Pete got a haircut this week. I don't know if you noticed that.
No, was it scruffy?
Did you know? It just looked a little tighter.
Does Pete even look remotely close at 71 years old? Like, this guy's ready to call it a career. Is Pete Carroll more likely to be coaching at 85 or retire in 2 years? I'd be like, hey, he's probably going to coach at 85.
Will he be coaching longer than Sean McVay?
Honest question. Does Pete make it to 80?
How old is he right now?
71.
I'm going to say no. I'm going to say has that happened?
Besides
coach at K-State. Was the coach at K-State on the sidelines at 80 plus?
Oh, yeah. Feels like Bobby Bowden was pretty old, doesn't it? Toward the end. I don't know quite.
What about Marv Levy? How old was Marv? So, yeah, I don't think Bruce Snyder made it. Bruce is 83 now, and his last year at K-State was 18. So I don't think he made it to 80. He did not.
Bobby Bowden died last year, 91 years old. Last coach Florida State in 2009. So if you do the math, in 2011, he would have been 81. He coached right to like 79. And I remember at the end, like, Bobby's got to go, man. But Bobby didn't quite ever feel body type, doesn't quite age as well when you're a little longer, skinnier. I think I've read Pete's a vegan. He just looks fantastic for his age. Like, Kyle's going to be thin and tall when he's that old, but is he going to be I just think it's very, very
Bouncy?
difficult to have that much bounce at that age.
Yeah. Well, it's just like Kyle's not as bouncy now. Bill Snyder, not Bruce. Marv Levy was 72 his last year in Buffalo. Somebody said Turno. Is his wiki still does that still exist?
I think you'd be hard to get Bobby Bowden 79. I would guess Paterno. I'm going to go 76. RIP. Depends. What
So he died in 12 at 85. His last year was 11. So he was at least 83, if not 84.
Will that ever be topped again if you had to place a bet?
I don't think so, man. It's insane.
I think that'll be a record that stands for life. 83, coaching a Power 5 powerhouse, never happening. What if Nick didn't want to tap out? Like, if they don't never
won,
if Nick Saban never wins more than 10 games again, when's the first year where it's like, Nick, it might be time? Does he have minimum 5-year grace period today? You don't think he's got a 5-year grace period?
4 straight years without 10 wins? Does he have? No way.
You think they'd fire him?
I think they would. Something would happen. He would leave.
It'd be hard to do, right? They're probably too talented to not have a 10-win season.
Just think about that means
let's just say let's do this. Let's do this. They don't make it. Let's say it this way. They don't make an SEC championship game for 5 straight years, meaning they're not making the playoffs.
Yeah.
Well, there's 12 teams.
Well, you could make the playoff in the future, but
yeah.
I think if he's not going to the playoff, he's not coaching if you told me he's not in the playoff for the next 5 years, he's not coaching year 6.
Does Kyle get another extension?
When was
after this year? I remember 2 years ago. He's got 6 years.
Depends, right? If you go to the Super Bowl, that's an automatic extension.
You think so?
I think so. Right? I mean, who doesn't get an extension when they go to a?
Yeah, I mean, you just make him the highest paid coach in the league. It's funny when you watch a football game with people that don't know all the specific rules, they go, and it kind of hits you back to the Purdy thing of, so does Purdy get a raise when he's a starter, or next year, when he becomes a starting quarterback, does he get a raise? No, he's actually just his contract. Here's what it is. It was $750 this year. It's $850 next year. It's $950, and then it's 1.2. That's just his contract, no matter what. And part of the advantage you have moving forward, and this is where even having Trey, your quarterback room, once you get rid of Jimmy, is 7 plus basically $850. It's $9 million quarterback room. That is a really, really powerful thing to have.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, extremely.
Because
Brock
this
will
will
get some sponsors. I mean, Zenny probably not. That's Kittle's territory. Adobe, Kittle's territory.
I could see Zillow, the DocuSign. You guys ever need to make a sign right here?
DocuSign is absolutely perfect. Their building is probably 3 blocks away from Levi's. That is perfect. Salesforce.
Not a stock trader, but I did, having just in the podcast world, we sign a lot. Even when tech was going through a weird thing, DocuSign is an incredible company from the sense of everything's going to be signed on your phone and your computer for the rest of our lives, right?
Yeah.
Beside the occasional, when you buy the house and they give you that huge thing and you got to sign all those even that, how much longer are we doing that thing for? Coming down the home stretch.
DocuSign's publicly traded. Is that what you're saying?
DOCU, love it. Well, it obviously had an incredible run. Like most people last year, came back to earth, and I put in a little cash probably a couple months ago. I just don't think DocuSign is going away. This is something that we've used, that everyone clearly uses in the business world, and is only going to continue to corner the market of we never need to hard copy anything again.
You could basically walk the halls of the Niners suite level and just look at all the logos, and one of those logos would be Brock Purdy's next sponsorship deal.
It feels like Apple may be a little too big, so you'd have to go kind of the middle tier tech that is still like a behemoth.
DocuSign is fucking perfect. Because it's to me, the Niners get their players these ads for things that you didn't even know needed to advertise, right? Like Adobe Acrobat. It's why are they advertising? Well, they just had to throw some money at Kittle. DocuSign. We all already use it. Why are they advertising?
Exactly. He's got that coming down the pipe. For
Corporate security cameras. Verkada. That'll
sure.
be
So, all the corporations know about this.